Hey guys, I'm Robert and Ingrid here, and we're at Ingrid's parents' house. And well, first,
It's Osiris, the doggo.
yep, that's her family dog. He's keeping an eye on me, I think. But we're about to watch, The Watchmen, and we're gonna see the fullest cut, the ultimate cut, final cut, whatever. It has everything in it. The animated pirate stuff, everything in here that's like the closest to being adapted of the comic. Now, you're a complete Watchmen noob.
The most I know is a couple of names in the button from pop cultural osmosis, but I know nothing about the actual plot.
So you're gonna be you are at least aware of it's like a deconstruction of superheroes, right?
Yeah, that's about the most that I'm aware of with regards to what it is.
Well, then you're gonna be in for quite a treat. It is. Again, it's gonna be a long one, like over 3 hours long. So not as long as the Snyder Cut, but pretty close. Yeah, this tells you about how Snyder is. Oh, got the dog in my hand while I'm holding the phone. But yeah, we'll see you guys on the other end. Guys, we got done watching it, and
What the frick was that? That was amazing.
yes, it was definitely. The comic is just amazing. I recommend you read it. You know, you pretty much watched most of it. There's still a lot of difference and a lot of cut out, but yeah, we watched the full cut. That means they included the Tales of the Black Freighter and all that stuff, and all of the well, at least everything that was shot. There was a lot of subplots they did not include, but yeah, overall, it was a very slow burn. Like,
Yeah,
good
it
Lord.
was a slow burn, but at least compared to the last really long movie we watched,
Which I
Kong,
haven't posted yet, but I'll probably yeah.
Yeah, compared to Kong, it didn't feel like any of the time was wasted. All of it
No.
was building up to the conclusion, and the conclusion was definitely satisfying. It's just, you have to have a lot of patience to get through it.
Oh, why? Yeah, that's probably why the theatrical cut is a bit shorter. But I think having the fuller experience makes it a better movie.
Yeah, it's just that it's not exactly the kind of thing that the average consumer is going to go all in for.
Definitely not. But let's talk about the characters. Like Silk Specter. What did you think about her?
Well, I mean, everybody was a hot mess in their own way, let's be real.
Yeah, but her, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of how the actress was in this. She came up a little plain. most of the time.
I sort of get what you mean there. It's just like you have so many other engaging personalities, and it just kind of feels like, hey, what's going on? It was basically what she was doing most of the time.
Yeah, and or kicking ass. Now, I mean, her mother came up with more personality what little time we saw her.
Yeah, that's fair.
What about the comedian? What about him? Talk about a despicable character, and yet, in the world that we had set up, he fit right in and made a lot of sense. You know what I mean? The guy who got killed at the beginning and everything, the one who started everything into motion. It's like, the guy was a deplorable in every sense of the word, but at the same time, you kind of understood, though, given the world and everything, why someone like him would thrive in it. Or what about Dr. Manhattan?
Oh, Lord Almighty, where do I start?
Go right ahead.
It's obviously a deconstruction of superhero type stuff, but you're sort of like going into the practical implications of what would like somebody going from just being like a relatively average person to somebody who's like, near godlike status, and just how inherently distanced you would eventually come from just the general experience of humanity.
Especially when you feel like you are there every second of your life. You know exactly what's going to happen, but you also know you can't avoid it because you know that doesn't happen. You feel, at first you feel like, oh, we'll eventually get there, but eventually you know then the closer and closer you get to that, the more and more you feel like, I can't enjoy it anymore. Yeah,
and it's just sort of ironic where it's just like he has so much power, but in the end it just feels like he was just another pawn on the board by everybody. It's just like, oh, he's the Superman. He's going to be this guy that's going to strike fear into the hearts of the Soviets or whatever. And he
did during Nam at least. But now what about Night Owl?
I honestly think that in a cast full of like various shades of gray and gray that's nearly black, he was probably the lightest.
Getting his bone. Yeah, definitely. He was definitely the lightest. Maybe a little naive, but not that much. Not as much as Ozzy said. We'll get to him in a moment, but yeah. And I really did like him. He was very much a character where you're like, he loved what he was doing because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's just like, you couldn't necessarily have everyone be completely gritty and edgy, because otherwise...
I mean, he kind of was he was to a small degree.
But sort of like, I feel like he sort of character-wise was kind of like the control group. Like, everyone else is like, you've got all of like...
You have, even with Laurie is a spoiled brat. I think that's the biggest thing. She is spoiled, rotten, and was in it for the action. Until she finally realized that she had no choice. Whereas Dan was in it the whole time because it was the right thing to do. But at the same time, he also was wanting to follow the law. To the point, even to the point where it was like, I can't break the law. It's like, you used to do it. And at the end, I love how the changes they made here from the book, I prefer. Him actually seeing Rorschach get killed and then just being devastated, losing his friend, and then beating the shit out of Ozzy was so satisfying. As opposed to having sex with Laurie and then, being oblivious to everything happening and then going along with it all. Now, what about Rorschach?
Hot damn, that was basically the biggest space case of the entire movie.
Would you believe, though, that unfortunately people actually took him as the hero of the piece?
You know what? Given that people have misread media pretty badly, I could believe that. It's just like, the man is basically a walking cautionary tale.
Exactly. Now, the funny thing is, he is right a lot of times. I think that's what doesn't help, is that he is right a lot of times.
He's right a lot of times, but he is severely fricked in the head.
Oh, he is. And I do like how you actually can tell a difference between them. Like, when he's with Dan, that's the only time you see old Rorschach, and you actually see how much of a nice guy he could be. To the point where, when Dan finally pulls a Rorschach on a guy... There was Rorschach who tells him, Dan, not here, not for the civilians, when he could care less about the civilians, but because his own friend was making a scene, it's like, this isn't you.
Yeah, it's just like, look, I may do that, but that ain't a character for you, buddy.
Well, let's get out of here. I mean, he understood why, because he just lost a friend, but...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then... but then, with Rorschach, though, I mean, Jackie Earl Haley nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
That voice of his, just talking like this with that
Oh,
breath.
yeah.
But someone even said, they basically said he was like a rabid dog who was ready to bite you at any moment.
Uh-huh.
Always snarling at you, and I see that. I exactly see that, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, though, he's too uncompromising.
Where it's just like, a person who is like constantly striving to do right but has a reasonable moral conscience will
That's Dan. That's Dan.
Will probably be able to say, hey, maybe this is going a little too far. Maybe I should see more nuance in this kind of thing. Maybe I should, like, it's just like, that's sort of like, it's the sort of thinking that's so rigid that when you apply too much pressure to it, it's liable to snap.
Which we know Rorschach already went well past that after that one case. Mm-hmm. Which I don't blame him.
It's just like, it reminded me a lot of a particular villain from Yu Yu Hakusho, where it's just like, the thing is that he was sort of like the last person to do the job that the current protagonist was doing, because he walked in on a bunch of mobsters who were basically committing horrible felonies upon the various things that he was supposedly told were the real evil things he needed to fight, and basically pulled a complete 180 and said, okay, then humans are the real monsters. I'm gonna let these monsters out and so they all die.
Yep, it's like with Rorschach, that last case, he thought it was a simple kidnapping of an heiress. They don't mention that in the movie, but that's what it was in the comic. They thought it was all about money. And up until this point, yeah, he dealt with some bad stuff, but he never dealt with something that horrible, that's needless. But he shows up there, and what does he find? The girl was butchered and then fed to the dogs.
I mean, no person is going to remain totally, like, normal after having
But someone
seen
else is
something
already
like that.
broken as him.
Well, that's just the last push that's gonna send you over the edge right into Insano Town.
Exactly. Now, what about Ozzy?
Holy shit, man.
You don't even see him that much in the movies. Or
You don't see him that much, but he's the one pulling the strings behind literally freaking everything.
Yep, and that line, I did it 30 minutes ago.
It's just like, oh shit.
But you hated him after that. You hated him.
Oh yeah, once he did that, I was just yelling at the screen, like, shut up.
And then he killed the cat.
And then he killed the cat, which was a particular personal trigger.
You already know from Trouble, so you know how much he loves cats.
Yeah, it's just like, you made a cat and then you killed him. You bastard.
Well, at least they showed you he made a new one in Doomsday Clock, at least.
Yes, but still, you killed a freaking cat.
Yep, and he got away with it.
He got away with it, yeah, because he just had the play of, well, I've set up Mr. Manhattan to be the boogeyman that everybody wants to go after now, so if you reveal my ruse, then you've just sent the world into war.
And even worse, because one of the Americans was behind it, which was, Ozzy himself. Like, you tell them, they'll feel like, oh, you, Nixon, you put him up to this. I did not. Yes, you did. Oh, let's go to war. Even worse, because they won't even listen.
It's just like, you couldn't have won, because you might have, like, godlike powers, but you can't stop
human nature.
And, yep.
That's what John said. You can't stop human nature. I gotta say, at least Rorschach, he was not an idiot.
Yeah.
He was like a rabid dog. But he knew, okay, I get what's coming. Just get it over with, why don't you? And then he died.
It's just like...
But so, were there any downsides you had with this?
I think, yeah, the main thing is just, like, it definitely took a lot to be able to kind of, like, sift... I feel like it was kind of like eating, like, a really rich buffet where it's just, like, there's a lot there and it's really good, but once you're done afterwards, you're kind of hit with a food coma.
Oh, yeah. Now, remember, though, this was based off of a 12-issue maxi series. No ads, no nothing, and it was already packed with words and images. So you gotta keep that in mind.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty massive, not just like adapting like a single story, but it definitely It definitely felt like sort of like a deeper piece, but it didn't necessarily feel pretentious.
Oh, no, definitely not. Now, what about the Tales of the Black Freighter?
I thought that was pretty neat. It was a sort of like interesting to kind of have all of like this like high stakes stuff interspersed with like two guys called Bernie who happened to be sharing comics in the midst of all of this who eventually end up getting obliterated.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it was pretty damn neat for it to be told in that format.
Yep, and then the story of it matches Ozzy's. A guy who feels like, I need to save the world, but ends up becoming a monster. Because you feel bad for the guy. He had the best of intentions getting home. Unfortunately, his mind was so driven on his nightmare that the Black Freighter is going to be there. I'll be too late. They're going to be dead. Not realizing, the Black Freighter will be there, but not the pillage.
The only thing they wanted in the end was you, because you're the monster.
You became the monster the moment you made the journey back home. You were given a chance of survival, and you spat in it, as one character put it. So now, what about? Let's just talk about something we don't usually talk about. What about the directing and everything? I mean, this was Zack Snyder, so the guy who did Justice League and Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and 300 and all that. What did you think about all this? For one, I'll tell you, not as much slow motion, thank God.
Oh yes, not as much slow motion,
No.
Lord almighty.
There was plenty of it, but it was more to show off the poses, the panels. You know, what were panels in the comics? It was more shown to makes you realize, like, oh yeah, this is based off of that sequence. But I would say, though, I did not care for the excessive gore.
Yeah, there were definitely some times where things felt really gratuitous, like, oh, did you really need to have that much blood? Or do you think you could have just sort of implied that, yeah, the sex thing was happening without
Now,
going
to
into
be fair in that one, apparently that was the executive that told him, so he's like, okay, fine. And he gave it to them gratuitously, just like, you asked for it.
I don't know. Still just kind of distracted from it because I was more thinking like, okay, when is this scene going to be over?
Hallelujah. At least it ended on a good gag.
Yeah.
You know, hitting right at the climax, hitting the flamethrower.
Yeah.
But overall, though, what would you rate this?
I think I would give it a 9 out of 10. Like, it was like a really solid story and concept, but there were just some times where the story was just kinda... where the practical execution was sometimes reveling a bit too much in the nasty bits.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of dark stuff in this story without you squirting a bit of extra gore in there.
I agree. One other thing. As a deconstruction of superheroes, what did you think? As a deconstruction of it?
I thought it was really, really good, because it's just like, you have good intentions, but sometimes you could be so far tunnel-visioned into your own particular perception of the world that sometimes you inadvertently end up causing more problems than you solve.
Well, not only that, though, but just the very notion that you can have all this power, you can be doing all this good, but people are going to eventually turn on you. Be it the government, be it public opinion.
Because politics are bullshit.
Yep. I mean, just look at what happened with the superheroes. Eventually, people were like, we want real cops. No comment. Yeah, I mean, no comment there.
Yeah,
but...
it's just like, it doesn't matter what you've done. If you look funny to people, they'll eventually get mad at you. It's just like, these are the sort of things that I've definitely run across in the sort of like stories that I've explored both on my own and or like in my D&D games. And it's just like, yeah, those kind of themes are deep. I'd like to see more stuff doing that in a way that isn't pretentious, but yeah, maybe turn down a bit on the more gratuitous bits.
Right. All right. Well, that's us. This is our only movie. No marathon or anything. Maybe we'll do a marathon in the summer. Who knows?
Yeah.
But until then, we'll catch you guys later.